Welcome to Ms. Evans's European History. Today we'll be talking about Europe in transition. The church had great power in medieval Europe. The belief was if God gave you artistic gifts, you were obligated to use them to glorify Him. When the Renaissance emerged, it marked a shift from the medieval focus on religion and tradition to a new era that emphasized human potential, curiosity, and learning. People began to study classical texts from ancient Greece and Rome, sparking advances in art, science, literature, and education. Thinkers and artists like Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo demonstrated what humans could achieve, helping to lay the foundation for the modern world by encouraging critical thinking, individualism, and a spirit of discovery. Even so, it's important to remember the Renaissance was not experienced by everyone. While wealthy patrons and urban elites enjoyed the benefits, many ordinary people in rural villages saw little change in their daily lives. During this time, Italy was not a unified country, but a collection of independent city-states. Many of these were republics, though some were ruled by powerful dynasties. Wealthy families such as the Medici in Florence and the Visconti in Milan exerted significant political and economic influence through banking, strategic marriages, military force, and political alliances. The independent city-states of Milan, Venice, and Florence emerged in northern and central Italy and played a key role in economic growth through trade and commerce. Their access to important trade routes connecting Europe with the Middle East allowed them to become major centers for the exchange and distribution of goods across Northern Europe. For clarification, here's the distinction between trade and commerce. If, for example, someone sells fruit at a market, that's trade. The trucks that deliver the fruit, the bank that handles the payment, and the ads for the market, all that is part of commerce. In Renaissance Italy, wealthy individuals and families, such as the Medici, were willing to spend large sums of money on art because it reflected their social, political, and spiritual values. Florence's prosperity from banking and international trade made such patronage possible. Much of the city's public art was funded and organized by powerful guilds. A guild is an organization of people who worked in the same trade or craft, such as weavers, bakers, goldsmiths, or painters. In the Middle Ages and Renaissance Europe, guilds set rules for training and quality of work, protected the economic interests of their members, and regulated prices and working conditions. Guilds also sometimes played a role in local politics and sponsored public works like art and architecture. In Florence, for example, powerful guilds funded churches and commissioned public art as a way to show their wealth and civic pride. As a result, patronage art became a way for individuals and families to compete for social prestige and political influence. Medieval art focused mainly on religious themes and was often flat, symbolic, and lacked depth or realistic proportions. Figures looked stiff with little expression, and backgrounds were usually gold or plain. Renaissance art, on the other hand, used vivid, bright colors, emphasized realism, perspective, and the beauty of the human form. Artists use shading and proportion to create depth, and subjects included both religious and secular themes, showing a renewed interest in nature, classical ideas, and individualism. Masaccio's fresco, Holy Trinity, painted in 1427, is one of the first artworks to show the use of linear perspective, which creates the illusion of depth and space, making the scene look more realistic. This painting is also important because it shows realistic human figures with emotion and natural body movement, something new for the time. Masaccio's work marked a big step forward in Renaissance art, moving away from the flatter symbolic style of the Middle Ages. Wealthy individuals could be buried or entombed in a church. This inscription in the sarcophagus at the bottom of this fresco has an amusingly chilling statement. I was once what you are now, and what I am, you too will be. Pope Julius II summoned Michelangelo to Rome to work on what would become his most famous project, the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. Michelangelo's painting of the Sistine Chapel ceiling is one of the most significant achievements of the Renaissance because it showcases the power of human creativity and skill. The ceiling, completed between 1508 and 1512, includes scenes from the book of Genesis. It reflects Renaissance ideals like realism, human emotion, and the classical influence. Pope Julius II was a powerful patron of Renaissance art, especially known for supporting artists like Raphael and Michelangelo. Unlike other popes more focused on religious matters, Julius was deeply involved in politics and expanding the power of the papacy. He earned the nickname the Warrior Pope because he personally led military campaigns to strengthen the church's territory and influence. As a patron of the arts, he helped fund some of the most iconic works of the Renaissance, including, as we already discussed, the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. In other significant art projects, Pope Julius II commissioned Raphael to decorate his private apartments in the Vatican's Apostolic Palace. Painted between 1509 and 1511, the School of Athens is a monumental fresco depicting many of the leading philosophers and scholars of ancient Greece. This artwork was created while Michelangelo was painting the Sistine Chapel ceiling nearby. This fresco contains virtually no overt Christian imagery, despite its Vatican setting. Instead, it celebrates classical learning by portraying great Greek philosophers and thinkers, including Plato, Aristotle, and Socrates. Raphael's masterful use of one-point perspective reflects the Renaissance ideals of balance, realism, and intellectual inquiry, drawing the viewer's eye to the central figures of Plato and Aristotle. Their gestures symbolize their contrasting philosophies. Plato points upward toward the eternal realm of ideal forms, while Aristotle extends his hand downward toward the physical world, emphasizing knowledge gained through observation and experience. Together, they represent two of the most influential approaches to understanding reality. Donatello's Bronze David depicts the young biblical hero David, who defeated the giant Goliath with a sling and then beheaded him. Donatello revived the classical tradition of the life-size, freestanding nude, and his work reflected the Renaissance ideals of humanism, individualism, and civic courage. This sculpture was probably commissioned by Cosimo de' Medici. The Dome of Santa Maria del Fiore is a masterpiece of art and engineering. Built between 1420 and 1436, it was designed by Filippo Brunelleschi and remains the largest masonry dome in the world. As the defining symbol of Florence, the dome represents the spirit of the Renaissance and the values of Western humanism. Brunelleschi's innovative construction techniques, such as building without traditional wood scaffolding, revolutionized architecture and made the creation of the massive brick dome possible. A Renaissance man is someone who is skilled and knowledgeable in many different fields, especially in the arts, sciences, and humanities. This idea came from the Renaissance belief that humans had great potential and should develop all of their talents. The term Renaissance man celebrates well-rounded individuals who strive for excellence in a range of subjects. Leonardo da Vinci is a famous example of a Renaissance man. He was not only a brilliant artist, but also an inventor, scientist, engineer, and thinker. He was ahead of his time, and I would argue that Da Vinci was one of the most brilliant men that ever lived. The following slides illustrate his creative genius. Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa is one of the world's most famous paintings, celebrated for its realism and the subject's expression. Painted in the early 1500s, it departed from the flat, rigid portraits of the past by portraying a lifelike figure with depth, emotion, and a natural landscape. The painting reflects Renaissance ideals of individualism, human emotion, and artistic innovation. The use of one-point perspective in The Last Supper is another example of Renaissance emphasis on balance, realism, and intellectual depth. Leonardo's use of one-point perspective draws the viewer's attention to the central figure of the painting, Jesus, who is positioned at the intersection of the painting's horizontal and vertical lines. Let's pause here to ponder and respond to the focus question. How did wealthy and powerful patrons help shape the great art of the Renaissance? Wealthy and powerful patrons, including popes, ruling families, merchants, and civic leaders, paid artists to create works that reflected their religious beliefs, political power, social status, and admiration for classical culture. Their financial support enabled artists such as Michelangelo, Raphael, and Leonardo da Vinci to undertake ambitious projects. Because patrons often selected the subject, location, and purpose of a work, they strongly influenced the themes and development of Renaissance art.